You guys know every Halloween, I always do a Halloween episode, right? And this year is no different than any other year that we do the Halloween episode. And today we're going to take you to a special place that I always go to every year. And that's right. This is Chaney Creek Cemetery. There we go. And we're going to talk to Mr. James Parker tonight. He's supposed to walk around in the full moon. Today is a full moon. So we'll see what happens. We'll put the cameras up and we'll talk ghost stories and back to Chaney Creek.
You have discovered, through the expansion of the internet world, I am Johnny Allen, and this is the Johnny Allen 30-minute podcast. We're going to be talking about your life, my life, and the world today. So sit back, relax, grab something if you need it, and let's do this.
Alright guys, this is Johnny Allen from the Johnny Allen 30-minute podcast. Sometimes I call it show, sometimes I don't. You guys know. Hey, again, like I said for the introduction, I'm back at Chaney Creek Cemetery, which is in Hamilton County, Indiana. And it's really basically, this place is a stone's throw away from where I actually reside in Fishers, Indiana. So anyway, we're here again. I've done this podcast out here for the last 2 years, I think, in a row. You can follow some of my, the past episodes. You're going to go back there. I tell a little bit more about the history of the place. But this graveyard has been here for a long, long time. There's a lot of history here. And it's actually October the 20th, 2021. And the reason why I'm out here October 20th, is a little bit before Halloween, is because it's actually a full moon today, or tonight. We're not going to actually see the full moon because the full moon is actually, it's up at 5 a.m. and at 5 a.m. I'm heading to the day job. So I won't be out here at 5 a.m. But we thought, we come out when it is a full moon. The significance of that is that Mr. Parker, who is buried here, which I'll tell a little bit about his story, supposedly on the full moon, he walks around. Last couple years I have not been out here during the full moon and didn't see much going on. Not saying we're going to see anything tonight, but you never know. So it is a full moon, so we're going to go ahead and film away, and I'm going to talk and share some Halloween and scary stories and some weird stuff, and just kind of do the podcast in the graveyard, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show you where Mr. Parker is buried, and then I'll sit down and we'll tell the story. All right, so what I'm going to do, guys, is walk up to Mr. James Parker's gravesite, and here it is right here. It's actually J.S. Payne. It's not Parker. It's. I'll tell you a little bit more about the story behind this gentleman. He was in the 35 Indiana Infantry, the 35 Division, looks like. Civil War vet. The story behind him, and I think it's the same one. If not, we'll talk about it from the book. The story about the Civil War guy, anyway. Well, like I said, I'll verify whether it's Parker or not, or if it's him. Anyway, what happened was he had was at the war, came back from the war. But during the war, he had taken a leave. He came back, found out his wife was not being so faithful while he was away fighting. Didn't like that idea, and in the next show, he came back and killed his wife and himself, a murder-suicide, in a carriage in the creek down here, Chaney Creek, which I'm going to walk down to, approximately where it happened. Now, the last time I was out here, which was last year, there's been some storms. There's this tree branch is blowing over, and yeah, it wasn't like that last year. Kind of an archway in the graveyard, which is kind of eerie. So anyway, again, I'm at Chaney Creek Cemetery. There's a book written. I'll talk about the book here in a minute. The creek, though, is down here. Way down here. And I'm not going to walk down here today. I've walked down here in previous episodes. It's pretty spider webby. As you can see, there's one there. You can see the web. And it's pretty growing up right now. We may take a walk back here, but later on in the winter time when it's cleared out. But the creek is right here. I don't know if you can see that little ravine right in there. But approximately right back in here is where the murder-suicide happened. So as the sun starts going down a little bit more, we'll bring the camera back out here and see if we can see him walking around. One thing I also noticed too is like these trees. This tree here is huge. It looks like it's a big oak tree, basically, pin oak. Huge tree. It has obviously been here for as long as the cemetery's been here, or before even. I don't know, it's just a huge, massive tree. It's got a little bit of damage there. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a little bit of damage there, probably from storms in the past. The Ellers are, a lot of the Eller family is buried out here. They were a pretty big family that settled here back in the day. Owned a lot of the property. A lot of things we're close to an airport, so I apologize for the noise. Plane's taking off right now. It wasn't like that back in 1840 when William passed away. In 1846. Passed away. He's 18 years old, 10 months and 7 days. I like the way they say that back in the day. You know, the stones would be more, I like that. You know, it tells you how old you were, how many years. 18 years, you were 10 months and 7 days old when you passed away. He was young. I don't know if he might have died from fever, might have died in the war, I don't know. Well, 1846 actually was before the war, so he probably died of a fever, because the Civil War was in the 1860s, right? 1864, 65, 63, right in there. But the stones are really preserved really well, which is nice. No one has really torn these up, which is great, because I hate vandals. You should have respect for the ones that have crossed over, right? There's an infant. I actually told the story before back here on the previous Halloween episodes. This right here is a unique story in the fact that this is a mother that had died in childbirth because this kid was only 12 months old after she died. And she died January 9th. And I believe that one of the babies was born shortly after the woman had passed away. But that's Amanda there. Amanda was a wife of James T. Gentry. Died in January the 9th in 1864. About 100 years, 1 month, and 27 days. She died before I was born. It's almost 100 years, 1 month, and 20 some odd days. She died 100 years before I was even born. Kind of uncanny, because I was born in 1964. But that stone there, little one right there, just says AMG. So who knows? It's probably an infant. The headstone there is almost half gone. I'm not sure. Probably the husband. I would imagine that was the husband, the wife, and the 2 children. A small family plot. And you can tell by the age of the gate how old this cemetery is, and plus, of course, the age on the tombstones. Died in 1864. I mean, that's been a while back. I'm going to go ahead and sit down in the chair, and we'll talk a little bit more. We'll read from a book that I bought a few years back. I'll introduce you to the author of the book. And again, the Halloween special, guys. Thanks for joining me. Chaney Creek Cemetery. I don't know if you can see the artwork on this, but it's pretty amazing. This has got to be one of the most interesting and most beautiful headstones I've ever seen. And look at the name. What a beautiful name. Eliza. I guess that's how they pronounce it. Eliza? Pardon me if I'm saying it wrong. Wife of Zebulon Hartman. Is that right? Zebulon? Born March the 20th in 1814 and died September 14th in 1885. She was 71 years old, 5 months and 24 days. It's almost 6 months. But 71 years old, when you're born in 1814 and you died in 1885, she saw a lot. She was just born right after the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812. I mean, 2 years after the War of 1812. And she saw the Civil War and almost saw like probably the invention of a car. Just think of what that woman there had seen. All right, guys, welcome to the Johnny Allen Podcast Show. 30-minute podcast, the show, whatever you want to call it. Hey, we are here. We are at Chaney Creek Cemetery for the Halloween, Halloween episode, which is always fun. It's actually October the 20th, like I said a little bit earlier, and the reason why is because it's a full moon tonight, and we're going to see if we can see Mr. Parker. I think that's the name of Mr. Parker. Yes, it's J.S. Parker. So that was not the correct tombstone I said earlier, because that was actually, it says J.S. Parker here in the book, and I'm going to just look real close. I'll be right back. We're going to look and see the facts. I'm back, and you know what? It's actually, there's a correction in this book. I'm talking about this book. It's the ghost of, it's called The Ghost of Chaney Creek. It's by Madeline S. Kinsley, which I actually met her a few years back. Really a nice woman, and we talked quite a bit about some things. I'll share some stories with you. But she's got an illustration of J.S. Parker, which actually it's Payne. So it's not Parker, it's Payne. So I was correct on my story about him, and he was a Civil War vet, okay? And it says James Parker was a Union soldier, unless they misprinted that, but that's a stone. I'm just going to call him, I'll call him from the book Parker, but it's actually, it says Payne on the tombstone. No, it's kind of confusing, but trust me, it's the same stone. But he had fought in the war at Chickamauga and Chissasaga, I guess I'm pronouncing that right. He was a Union soldier, and what the story says here is he was a hero. Then he deserted to come home because of rumors that his wife had been unfaithful to him. So he had heard his wife was basically having an affair, so he came back home. He started drinking too much and lost his farm, because years ago this was a farm, okay? And it isn't anymore. We got Allisonville Road right behind us, like you guys heard earlier on the airport, is right by us, and the airplane going by. So anyway, but back in the 1800s, in 1700s, this was a farm area, of course, and he started drinking too much and everything. He lost his farm, and he had got drunk one day, drove his wagon with his wife and him on it, horse-drawn wagon, of course, back in the day, and he drove it running high and fast, and it was in the springtime, and he drove it right into the creek back here, over this direction. And they both drowned, swept down the creek and drowned, right? So the thing, like I said, with the full moon, so supposedly at night, he walks around here every full moon, supposedly looking for his wife. You know, it's weird, he killed her, It's amazing what alcohol and jealousy will do. That's so true even today, right? But you got to think it happened like 150 years ago as well. You can't mix the two, right? That's what happens. You make decisions that you shouldn't make. But anyway, it's a real good book. It's called The Ghost of Chaney Creek, written by Madeline. And there used to be a farmhouse over here. It's Duke Energy power station now. And there used to be a farmhouse over there, and she had stayed there with some of her friends back, I believe, in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. Okay, it's a nice book. It's pretty lengthy. I won't go through all of it. But the one thing is that she talks about the ghost in here. Actually, she was here in the summer of 1967, so I was only 3 years old. But it used to be a farmhouse there. But interesting book, and I got her card. If you guys are interested, there's the card. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, that's her card. I could post a link below. Anyway, again, thanks for joining me. I'm going to chat a little bit about some spooky stories, share some of my experiences. I'm going to walk around for a little bit. I'm just going to let the camera just run for a while like I did the last few years. See if you guys see anything unusual back here behind me. See if there's anything going on behind these gravestones out here. And see if there's some ghosts or anything like that, right? So, like I always talk about, it's 2021, and here's the one thing too that's really strange about this whole Halloween thing and me sitting in the graveyard. It's kind of sobering because we're all going to be here. We're all going to be gone, not here in the graveyard, not in this graveyard, but we're going to be in the graveyard, or we're going to be cremated. We're going to die, right? We're going to die. Everybody's going to die eventually. And with everything going on with COVID and everything, we've lost a lot of loved ones, lost a lot of friends. It's very touching. This episode's even more touching than even last year, because I've lost a lot of friends just recently, and it's an awakening. It kind of puts everything in perspective to enjoy every day, get the most out of a day, right? Because you just never know. You just never know, right? If you guys want to share some Halloween stories or scary stories, feel free to comment below. Put it down there, and we'll talk. I'd love to hear what you got going on, what you've experienced. So I'll start with a couple stories. You probably heard this one in the past, but years ago in the early 2000s, I lived in a farmhouse in Patricksburg, Indiana, on about 180 acres. The farmhouse was built in the 1840s, rather. And I was there one night. The family was out on vacation. I came home from work. I worked a second shift at that time. Came home late at night. And this place is out in the middle of nowhere, okay? I came home pretty late at night, and I'm about ready to fall asleep. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. I hear this big kaboom. Don't know where it comes from. Thought someone was in the house. Got up, looked around the house, looked everywhere, nobody around, nothing. There was nothing in the house. I mean, I thought for sure someone was breaking in the house, right? Nothing there, right? A couple of weeks later, my wife comes home. She discovers we had an iron skillet. She discovers the iron skillet had been actually thrown across the room. Don't know how this happened, true story, and actually twisted. The iron skillet was actually twisted. Now, if you're familiar with iron skillets, which I'm sure everybody is, they just don't twist. Unless you apply tons of heat to it or something, they just don't do that. You can't twist them. It takes a lot of force to be able to even twist one, right? And years go by, and we end up moving from the farmhouse, and we were unpacking our stuff to move into the new home, and she saw that skillet that was bent. She says, "That creased me out, John, get rid of it." So I ended up throwing it in a dumpster. But to this day, can't explain how that happened. Have no idea how it happened. It was washed. It was on a dish strainer in the kitchen. It flew literally about 20 feet. I found it on the other side of the room.
because we had a big room attached to the kitchen. Big farmhouse, right? So this day I can't explain it. Don't know. I don't know if it was some kind of gravitational force that pushed it. I heard it that night, but didn't know what it was. But very weird. And it was weird things that happened in that place. I lived on a place on New York Street in Indianapolis back in the mid 80s and early 90s with my brother. I moved down there around 91, 92. And just weird stuff went on there all the time. We had cats. The cats would see something walking across the room. We couldn't see it, but they say cats have this sixth sense of being able to see spirits. And for years and years, I never really believed in ghosts or anything like that. Until about 10 years ago, I started really believing there's such thing as ghost or spiritual activity, because without sounding too strange, I've seen them. And what's weird about where I'm here tonight, this graveyard, since I live fairly close to it, one day I was just walking. It was a summer day in July. It was hot. It was summer, and I was just walking approximately over by where the Duke Energy power station is now, which is over my shoulder. And I had a feeling that like something was watching me, and I turned around and looked, and I seen a figure of a skinny woman in a white veil, just for a split second, like when you blink your eye, like those old time movies where they're just blinking and flashing. I turned around and looked and saw the woman standing there about maybe 30 feet behind me, and then as soon as I saw her, made eye contact, she disappeared. Really weird. And that happened here, probably about 5 years ago, maybe. Just strange, very strange. What's going to be kind of cool about tonight, speaking of cool, is that it's about 70 degrees now, but we got a cold front coming in right now as I speak. I can actually feel the coolness. And we're supposed to get some rain later on tonight. But we got this cool front coming in, and it's a full moon. So we'll just see if James Parker's out walking in the graveyard. Like I said, it's just kind of nice to share some of this stuff with you and sit out here in the graveyard. And when I get done talking, I'll just let the camera roll, like I said, and move it in various places. We'll just let it roll, and you guys tell me if you see something. The last couple times I've done this, I thought I saw something, but I couldn't really make it out too well. And yes, I don't have anything in this thermos but coffee. And thank you, Tim. It's CWE Coffee, by the way. I endorse CWE Coffee. I have the link below. Go get your CWE coffee. It's great stuff. Tim, I hope you're doing well up here in Michigan. Another story I'd like to actually share with you, a ghost story. I got a bunch of them. But this one goes back when I was a teenager. And this is from Bogstown, Indiana. Because I live in Indiana and grew up in Indiana. Bogstown, Indiana has got a graveyard similar to this. It's a little bit bigger, but about the same age. An old one. And I was a teenager, and I was young and dumb, and with one of my young and dumb friends, and well, we had been drinking some alcohol, and we decided we were going to go. We had to go pee, right? We just had to go. We had to go, as my good friend Charles says, we had to go pay a water bill. So my friend decides, oh, let's just stop over there at that graveyard, and I'll go over there and I'll pee in the graveyard. Not a good idea to urinate in a graveyard, and I'll tell you why. So my buddy and I, we go there, and he proceeds to jump over this concrete wall, which is behind, the graveyard's behind the concrete wall, right? So he proceeds to jump across there and peeing, and then as he's peeing, he's being a little belligerent and a little disrespectful and peeing on some of the gravestones, which I don't recommend that at all, period. And lo and behold, I was back in the car, and I had shut my car off, and we heard this real low groan, like someone dying, evil, just bad spirit groan going on, like the spirit was pissed off, right? I mean, no pun intended. Was very pissed off because of the urination going on in the graveyard. He was not a happy camper beyond the grave, right? So we're hearing this eerie, god-awful sound. I still remember to this day. That was like 37 years ago. Could hear this sound, terrible sound. And he heard it. He says, "Hey, what are you doing? Quit making that noise." I said, "I'm not making that noise. I thought you were doing it." He goes, "No, I'm not." And it kept getting louder and louder and louder. There was no animals, no coyotes, nothing like that. I've heard coyotes, I've heard animals, I know what they sound like. You know, I grew up in the country. It wasn't anything like that. This was like something you heard from a scary movie, horror story, whatever. This was bad stuff. And he goes, freaks out, starts running towards the car. He says, let's get out of here. I go to try to start the car up, and it doesn't start. Like the classic haunted movies. The car would not start. I kid you not. Finally it started. And then I went to take off, and it wouldn't go. The car wouldn't go. I didn't drive. I'd go. I just was sitting there. And then finally it got traction and left. Well, we were so paranoid that day that we didn't even go back that direction. I went 10 miles on my way to avoid that graveyard, and for years I'd avoid that graveyard. But the moral of the story is, guys, is I don't think you need to be respectful to the people that have crossed over. Because even though our bodies are gone, our souls are not, and our souls continue to keep moving on and keep existing. And I might do another podcast about this. I might actually have a guest come on and talk with me about the spiritual subject, about spirits and things of that nature, because and not getting into the Bible or into the Christian beliefs or whatever, even though I believe that because I'm a Christian. But I believe obviously in God, but I do know that your soul continues on. Your soul will continue on even after it leaves this body. And like I said, I got some people in mind, a guest, one in particular, Gaal, that I think I'll invite on sometime. We'll talk about that, right? We'll talk about that. It's very interesting stuff, but like I said, with the COVID and the whole pandemic, we've been losing a lot of people. We just lost 200 and some lives here in Indiana just in the last couple of months from COVID, which is kind of scary. You know, they had pandemics back in the day too, wars, you know. Death is definitely a factual thing. It's nothing that we're ever going to escape is death. We're never going to escape it. It's sobering in a way. Like I said earlier, it's sobering in a way. But there's a lot of history in this particular graveyard, and not a lot of people know about this graveyard, which I'm glad they don't. Because I think when something becomes popular, it has a tendency to deteriorate. No pun intended again. Halloween deterioration. But really, things get destroyed sometimes, and by no means do we ever want anything like this to ever be destroyed. Comment below on anything I got to say today. This is the Halloween special, the Halloween episode, and like I said, it's a full moon. You can't see it because it's on the other side of the earth right now. It'll be up there around. You know, if I didn't have to go to work, I'd come out here about 3 o'clock in the morning, because it'd be right behind me about 3, and it would be here at 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, that's it. I tell you, if you got any stories, share them. I'm just kind of sitting out here, just relaxing, cool breeze, graveyard. So again, if you want to get Madeline's book, I'll put the links below. I'll let you know where you can get it. It's pretty interesting. She talks about living out here on this property and visiting this graveyard as a kid and the weird stuff that goes on. One last thing I'd like to talk about with Madeline here is, like I said, I met her about 5 years ago. She was actually doing the book signing. I bought the book. We just started talking about, I didn't even know what she was into. I didn't know what the book was. I didn't know anything about her, right? So I started to talk to her about the spiritual realm and things like that, and we started hitting it off with a pretty good conversation. And she goes, "Oh, by the way, I wrote this book." I went, "Wow, okay, pretty neat." But we shared a lot of similarities. And if you believe in the spiritual world, and when I say spiritual world, do you believe like when you die, your spirit goes places? Do you believe your spirit hangs around the earth sometimes? I believe when you die, you go to heaven, but I also have some other beliefs there that a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters and family and I don't agree on. But that's okay. You know, it's okay. It's okay to have your own opinion and your own thoughts. And I'll have an episode where I get further in depth in this stuff, because it really is fascinating to me. And I'll share more of my experiences. But if you believe in the spiritual world or whatever, comment below. Share some of your stories. Like I said, share some of your spooky stories. Things that might have happened. If you don't believe in ghosts or anything at all, put that below. Comment on that. Say, John, I don't believe in ghosts. I just think, it's a bunch of garbage. The thing is, I lost a good friend of mine about a year and a half ago. And we had some talks years before that he had passed. And I said, his name was Terry. And I said, Terry, do you think that when you die, you go to heaven? And he goes, no, I just think when you die, that's it. When you die, that's it. Now, the funny thing is, before he had passed away, he had told me about a year before he had passed away that he did believe you can go somewhere. So he had changed his whole thought process. He says, I do believe you go to heaven. So that was good to hear that. There's lots of things that you could say about the spiritual world. Hauntings and things like that nature. I've never really had a haunting. I've had some things happen in my house that I can't explain. I've seen things in my house that I can't explain. I can see the figures. I can make them out whether they're male or female. In our house, we have a male and a female figure. I'm the only one that can see it. Barbara cannot see it. She can sense something once in a while is going kind of funny, but I can actually see these spirits. Now, you guys may look at me and think, are you sure that's all you got is coffee in there? And I don't say that to too many people, but since we're doing a Halloween special, I think I might as well open up a little bit about it. I have a knack of being able to see ghosts. Now, I can't just say, I'm going to look and, there's a ghost there, there's one there. It doesn't work that way. It's like when I'm out there washing a car or something like that, when my mind is totally clear and I'm not thinking about anything else. Or one time I'm sitting on the toilet doing my business. Wow, a ghost appears. And it's really quick, like I was talking about earlier about the woman that I saw here. It's really quick. Anyway, share your ghost stories. We're out here at Chaney Creek Cemetery again. Thanks again for joining and stopping in. I'm going to move the chair. I'm going to move the camera closer to the graveyard. I'm going to do some stuff on the phone, look around, and I'm just going to let this thing I'm just going to let the film roll for a while. See if we pick up Mr. Parker or anybody else that maybe decide to visit, know that we're here. Hey, we're here. If you guys want to say hello to us, right? All right, guys, have a happy Halloween. I'll be back in a few. We're just going to let this thing roll.
Okay, guys, we're just letting the film roll. You let me know if you see anything odd. We may actually, we're going to actually move the camera this way a little bit. Go lengthwise down. We've got the Eller family here. God rest their souls. First of all, God rest every soul that's in this graveyard, because, like I said, we're all going to be here someday. Some of us sooner than others, maybe. I don't know. The Lord only knows. Let me know what you see.
Probably about bigger than that, I believe. That's a
Have you seen anything yet? kind of a, I don't know, it's quiet. Sometimes I come up here just it's quiet. But thanks again for joining me, guys, and thanks for supporting the channel. And I do want to get some guests on soon. I talked to actually my pastor about getting on Woody. We're going to talk about some things. And we're just figuring out, I'm actually figuring it out. They know I'm figuring out the technical aspects. I don't know how much of that I missed. I was talking about the acorns hidden and falling. It's almost like the ghosts are throwing things at me. This is a really neat stone. Okay guys, this is actually 6:20, and according to the time, it gets dark at 6:58, and it's 6:20 now, so it'll be dark here in about less than a half hour. We won't be out here that long because I don't have a flashlight to see anything. Have you seen anything yet, guys? I don't know. We'll let it roll for here just a little bit, and then we will, I'll do some closing commentary, and we'll call it a day. I didn't capture that, but they fly some World War II aircraft out here, and man, my footage is all, or my storage on my phone is all full. I got to fix that because that footage was awesome of that. If I would have caught that World War II aircraft, it was an old Navy plane. I think a P-51. Well, it wasn't a Mustang. It was the Navy version of that. But anyway, pretty cool plane. You probably heard it. No ghost yet. Let me know if you see something. if you do see something, it would be very quick. Very quick. I'm just going to spin the camera around this way, off the graveyard. It's right in front of the graveyard, just to get some footage of this of the woods back here. The woods itself is kind of eerie looking, actually. Right there. It's a pretty eerie woods. And you got to think that back in the 1800s, I have no idea what that was, car squeal or something? Back in the 1800s, this was all farmland. Guys, thanks for joining me out here at Chaney Creek Cemetery. It's kind of fun. I don't know if we caught any ghosts or not, but it's just kind of fun to get out in the graveyard when, you know, at Halloween, right? And just kind of think about what I mentioned earlier about enjoying every day, because one thing's for sure, we're not going to get out of here alive. Woo, right? We're not going to get out of here alive. None of us are going to get out of here alive. That's just the way it is, the way it's designed. It'd be kind of neat to live forever, although some people think, well, you know, I wouldn't want to live here on the earth forever. You know, we're kind of living in some troubled times right now. I just heard, like, Monday, you know, the Chinese got a subsonic missile. I know it has nothing to do with Halloween, but, well, it kind of does in a way. It's scary. Scary times. You know, the Chinese got a subsonic missile that we can't detect. Nuclear, of course, loaded with nukes. I've talked about this before. We got enough nukes between these countries that have nuclear devices that can blow the earth up 50 times over and over again. You know, William Shatner just went up into space a week or so ago. He talked about how small the earth really is. We are really small compared to the whole vastness of the universe and everything beyond the universe that we can't even see or can't imagine. We're just this little bitty speck, like I talk about all the time, and it's true. And that's why I think it's so important to be good and have a good camaraderie with your fellow human beings while you're here, because we are just a simple thing, like the Kansas song, we are dust in the wind. From dust thou art to dust returneth. That's so true. We're going to be back in the dirt someday. We're only here for a brief moment in time, right? We're not here for very long when you think about everything that goes on. How delicate life is. I mean, like I said, I've lost lots of friends the last couple years. One very close friend of mine, Terry Darby, still, you know, hurts to this day that he's gone. Family members, musician buddies of mine. I talked about that all last week or the week before. So, treat your fellow human being nicely. Try to make the best out of life. And you know, I could talk about money and all this other stuff, like making lots of money, that makes you happy and blah, 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 blah. Not really. I mean, everything is temporary, and it's true you can't take the money with you, and it's just a shame that we've gotten into this whole thing of you have to be somebody, so to speak, is what I'm getting at, you know, whether you make a lot of money or not, or whatever it is. But you're just a small, no matter how much money you have. I mean, you look at somebody, like I look like for example, Eddie Van Halen. You know, he was a rock star. To some people, rock god. You know, whatever you want to call that, guitar hero. You know, had tons of money before he died. Was living the life, right? And how fragile, boom, is gone. But one thing he did is he left a legacy as far as like in the guitar rock world anyway. I think it's good to just leave a good legacy while you're here.
and be an honest person and enjoy life. Like I said, just enjoy things. Be a good person, as a good steward to other people. It's so important because we're just a speck. We're just this little speck. We're just a headstone out here. That's it. We're just a headstone. We're a little headstone on this big planet, which is actually a small planet in this vast universe. I mean, you stop and think about that, guys. We're born, we live for a short time, we experience as much as you can experience, be the best human being as you can possibly be. And then you go, you're gone from here. You end up in a place like this, and you're just a little speck on a little speck in a big, huge universe. That's all I got. That's all I got. Thanks again for stopping by. And life's a mystery. This whole thing's a mystery, right? I'm 57 years old, and I still haven't figured it all out. I don't know if I ever will, you know? It's like, okay, does your spirit go on after you leave, right? We can ask these questions. Or do you just die and that's it? Or do you live forever? Or does your spirit go on forever? I believe that your spirit does go on forever. Comment below on anything I had to say, or just say, hey, John, how's it going? Again, don't forget to go get the CWE coffee up there in Lansing, Michigan. If you like sports, go listen to Chris and Daniel down there in Austin, Texas. Life is interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. I don't know if we saw, like I said, I don't know if we saw any ghosts. If you guys saw something that was weird, let me know. Comment below. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. Happy Halloween. Be safe, whatever you're doing. And remember, life is very short. Ask these folks behind me if you don't believe me. Life's short, right, guys and gals? Life is very short. Make the best of it, because someday, me and you are going to be where they are, right? Think about that. Happy Halloween.